Prepare to step into a world where imagination knows no bounds as we present Legends, Loot, and Lore. Join your hosts, Andrew and Joe, the dice-rolling dynamic duo who will guide you every step of the way into the realm of Dungeons & Dragons. From crafting narratives to character creation, this podcast is your gateway to becoming the hero of your own story. Whether you're a new adventurer or a seasoned traveler seeking new insights, Legends, Loot, and Lore has something for everyone. After the episode, visit our website at www.legendslootandlore.com for even more resources and exclusive content. And if you're as passionate about this adventure as we are, help support our quest at legendslootandlore.supercast.com. Embark on this odyssey with us and let the echoes of ancient tales guide you toward a destiny filled with limitless possibilities. Roll for initiative, because your adventure begins now.
Welcome back to everyone to the Legends, Loot, and Lore podcast. Today's episode features our guest, Courtland Goldengate, and we are going to talk about all things character backstory. So that's going to be today's episode, really diving into what makes a great backstory, kind of what things you should think about, how to go through that whole process. Because when Joe returns from fall soccer, we are going to create some of our first characters. So really backstory is really where you're going to get to use your imagination. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But Courtland, please introduce yourself for all of our listeners and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. So yeah, as Andrew said, my name is Courtland, and I don't know what there is to say. I love TTRPGs. I've been playing them pretty heavily for maybe 5 years now.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm one of those guys that like had the books when I was younger and was very into like reading them and reading all about the pantheons and the items and the monsters,
Right.
but then never really got around to playing or tried to play,
Mm-hmm.
in junior high, maybe in high school, but like not doing it right, Not that there's a wrong way to play these
Sure.
games, but it can be intimidating with hundreds of pages of rules and all the coordination and all of that. So I would say I've been into fantasy and role-playing games my entire life, but only really with 5th edition have I like very much gotten into playing and acting as a game master. Outside of that, I enjoy this hobby so much that I actually recently left my, boring old corporate enterprise job
Yes.
to start my own company. So I've been working in the space of software developer tools,
Mm-hmm.
data science, machine learning, and software for these people. And that's all well and good, but what I really most wanted to do is get deep into the community of people that share the same sort of hobbies that I have. And so I'm now currently trying to like blend my hobbies and my out of work interests with my actual work. And as a result, I am building software called Tavern. It's tavern.com. And it's software to record, transcribe, and then summarize your tabletop role-playing game sessions so that you can have a history of your campaign. Thank you. Yeah, it's one of those things where like I take a lot of notes, but sometimes I fall off doing that. And it's a lot of work to keep a record of that. And so, it's just one of those things where I'm building something that I want. And I hope that it's something that can bring other people joy as well. And we'll see. I mean, the app is actually going, the beta test, the first round of beta testers is starting tomorrow. So I'm incredibly excited to like get some real feedback on it. Yeah,
so let's dive into this a little bit more. So give us some more detail about what the app actually does. Is this an iOS, Android based app, or is this a computer like web based app? What's the actual process?
it's a web app, and so it's it runs great on mobile, but it's not
Hmm.
it's not like an iPhone app or anything like
Right.
that. So you can just run it off a browser or off a mobile device or a tablet, whatever you want. And it's very simple and straightforward. You just create a campaign. You can have whatever number of campaigns you want, and then each time you sit down for a game session, you just click add session and click a button, and it starts recording. Um, and it will then take that audio recording, transcribe all the text to it, so you have a history of like all the text. But then I think maybe the more interesting thing is that it then allows you to summarize that. So
Hmm.
if you want to like have a journal basically as a player in a
Right.
TTRPG campaign, you can have that without distracting yourself during the game and just focusing on the people there and focusing on the game rather than jotting down notes the whole time.
Oh, sure.
And then as a game master, you can take those summaries and then without any effort really, you can do the post session recap. So
Hmm.
if you play weekly or bi-weekly or even monthly, it's really easy to say, hey, as a reminder, here's what happened last session, because we've just got that summary ready to go already.
That is super cool. Yeah, for me, I know as both a player and a DM, note taking is not one of my strong suits. So I've worked. I have to really work to get better at note taking, and I play now in 3 separate campaigns. One I've gotten much better in the newer ones as I go along, taking detailed notes. I really like in the one campaign that I play. Um, the DM basically has everybody kind of write a summary of that's night activities, based on their perspective. So you get to see
Mm,
everybody's perspective of the same type of events, like from their character's perspective. So it's really, that one's really interesting as well. So I'm a huge proponent of anything that makes that process easier to share that information out, because not everybody is a note taker. Um, and it just helps for recollection as to kind of all sorts of things. What loot you got, who said what, just trying to keep track, and depending on, sometimes it may be weeks in between your gameplay sessions. So it's a nice healthy reminder to, oh yeah, that's what happened, 3 weeks ago, the last time we were able to play. So that's really cool. I can't wait to see it and try it out. And we
thank
will
you, man.
we
Yeah,
will
yeah, I'd
definitely
love
put the
to
link in the
hear your
show notes
feedback.
for everybody. And what
Awesome.
was
Yeah, I really
what's the
appreciate it.
URL again?
Talltavern.com.
Talltavern.com. Excellent. So we will definitely have that in the show notes, so everybody can go there and check it out. Um, so tell me a little bit about your background. So you really got into playing when 5e came out. Um, so do you remember the first character you created in 5e?
I do. I do. I actually don't remember this character's name, and that's, probably an indication that this character wasn't that interesting. It was just
Hmm.
a stat block, right? It was
Right.
it wasn't a character. It was a warlock that had a uh, dexterity based weapon.
Sure.
There was no backstory. We didn't do a session zero, and it was still fun to play. I think I had the kind of a great old one pack.
Hmm.
So I was very excited about having my character be like drawing upon some of the stuff from the Cthulhu mythos, and I had it in my mind the idea that my character would like grapple with growing um, mental health challenges and
Hmm. Hmm.
insanity setting in from his connection to this
Interesting.
alien entity.
Right.
Um, and so I think it was interesting in my mind, but really more of a learning experience actually in what not to do. Um,
Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
just yeah. So it was a fun idea, I think, in my mind, and then in practice, it was a kind of a chaotic character behaving irrationally at some times that got in the way of what the rest of the party wanted to do. As the character was like grappling with insanity. And I think the thing that I really didn't consider is that a good backstory isn't just about you. A good backstory is a backstory that enhances the enjoyability of everyone at the table, the game master,
Sure.
the other players, and yourself.
So that'll lead me into my first question for you. So what really makes a compelling backstory that's engaging for both the player, the campaign, the rest of the party, and even the DM? So what really makes that a compelling character as far as the backstory is concerned?
Well, I mean, the first thing you got to get right is you need to min-max all your stats. You need to go online and theory craft your character out to level 20. And, no, I'm just kidding. No, like, don't worry about any of that.
Right.
And in fact, if you do, like, creating a powerful character can be a lot of fun, but it's actually really limiting in a lot of ways if you want to create an interesting character, because everyone generally wants to create a powerful character. And so there are certain types of characters that are just more powerful than others. And those are the most common ones. And I find that what people really enjoy is creating a character that feels unique to them, where it's a character where the player gets to act as the author of that character, or that character can be used to explore an aspect of the player's identity. And both of those can be interesting because you're drawing on real human characteristics to try and make your character relatable, but also unique. So it's a balance between those two things, I think, where you want to make a character that's, different and interesting because of the fact that they're different, but that has enough about them that can be connected to, so that the other people at the table feel like this is someone that they want to get to know, someone that they might have things in common with, and someone that's different enough that makes them want to spend the time to figure out what they have in common with that character. I think that it helps to think about the personality that your character has, and then work backwards to think about their history that would have led them to have the kind of personality that they have, or do the reverse. Think about their history and how that would impact their personality. Did you grow up in a very safe environment where the authority figures in your life were characters that brought safety and comfort and were reliable? As a result, do you generally trust authority? Or maybe it was the reverse. Maybe your first inclination is to be distrustful, to be skeptical. And what would cause you to have those kind of characteristics? So I think you can start in either direction, but it's important to connect the past to the present.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I have in my own character creation, I think I've really tried to kind of understand kind of who they. I always start with the present, like who are they now, and then I go backward. I'm the type that I'll start with, this is kind of who I want to be, and now I'm like, okay, well, what made him that way, or made her that way? What made them that way? So that's typically the tack I've taken when drawing up a backstory for a character. But it's interesting going all the way to the back to say, well, what happened to them first? Let's talk about their past, and how does that, and what kind of character does that morph them into today? So that's an interesting vantage point from character creation.
If you want to go that kind of less common route of
Mm-hmm.
starting with what happened in my past to then figure out who am I today. That can be good if you don't know exactly who you want to be when you have a character.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of the people that listen to your podcast are newer to the hobby, and so that might be an interesting thing to try. If you're not really sure what kind of character you want to be, you could even do things like roll on a table to kind of have life experiences that took place, and then think about like how would that life experience affect who I am today.
Right.
So you could use some tools to effectively get through writer's block, or that feeling of staring at an empty page and not knowing where to start.
Yeah, what you said. Yeah, taking a look at it from a different angle is definitely a good way to kind of cure the writer's block of trying to figure out who am I. Say, well, where did I start from? It's like you think of, I think of, the first thing that pops into my head is the backstory for Bruce Wayne, Batman, and kind of the tragedy that happened in his young life. And it really could go, you could go either way. You could, that could become the beginning of your villain arc, or that could become the how you become the hero. You could really take it both ways. So it's really an interesting starting point to go from the past, and where does it lead from there? It could be anywhere. So it's a fun adventure trying to figure all that out.
Definitely.
So tell me this. So let me ask this question. Can you think of an example of a character backstory of all the characters that you've played, or someone that has been at your table that you've DM'd, that really, what's a memorable backstory that has kind of left an impact or left a mark on your memory of all the tables you've been a part of?
Well, I think that it's good to have some amount of backstory, but not have so much that it takes center stage. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
called a backstory for a reason. Like,
Right.
the coolest parts of your character and their story should take place and should emerge through gameplay. But it is important because it gives you a way to react and to build your character and their story, because it kind of gives you an idea of how you would react to the situations that the game master is going to throw at you. So let me, to answer your question, like, I feel like I'm kind of dodging your question right now. To answer your question,
Yes.
a character that comes to mind for me, I feel like I'd make a good politician. Like,
That was a great political answer.
oh yeah,
A,
yeah,
a
that
deep,
was an
thoughtful
interesting
answer that
question.
has nothing to do with the question itself.
Not at all. Yeah, that was a brilliant question asked by a beautiful person. And let me talk about something else that I want to talk about. So there is a character that comes to mind for me,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a character whose name I do remember. So that's immediately a good sign versus
All
the
right.
first character that I created. And this character's name was Aidan Broadmoor, who was a arrogant, selfish, condescending, vain noble, like not a good guy, not someone that you'd want to uh, hang out with,
Right.
but who had a little bit of like a comedic air to
Mm-hmm.
him as well. And so I thought it would be entertaining for the table to have an unlikable, arrogant, but like kind of comic relief
Mm-hmm.
character. And so when creating this character's personality, I was actually inspired by what's his name, like the military officer in Futurama, like I can't remember his name, like the blonde guy, and he's got his alien kind of
Oh
buddy that does
yes,
all the work.
absolutely, absolutely. I know who you're. Hang on, I'm going to have to look. See, now I'm going to have to look it up because Zap
Uh,
Brannigan.
There it is, Zap Brannigan. Yeah.
Yes,
So I
Zap Brannigan. Yes,
just
exactly. I know he's so cocky and just full of himself. And yep.
yeah. And so just the idea of like comedically repeating what other people at the table said, but like more
Mhm.
loudly and with more gusto. It was a fun little quirk to add in there. Um, and the thought I had about kind of his backstory in terms of like what would cause that arrogance, and obviously a life of privilege, like growing up with rich parents, being spoiled, having it just be expected that you'd be leading in whatever situation you were
Right.
in, and have it not even cross your mind that you wouldn't. This thought that there's a certain amount of predetermined leadership capacity that people had, and you happen to be born with it, and other people
Mhm.
happen to not be.
Right.
Um, and just kind of like sheltered, like not being in a situation that, not really having ever faced any challenges and being pretty weak as a result, like
Right.
not having kind of adversity to like build kind of, his own character. And I thought that would be kind of a good way to tackle a backstory, because during an adventure, you encounter a whole lot of adversity. And so that was a sort of backstory that like pre-programmed
Mhm.
room for growth.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's part of what makes kind of a character interesting or memorable, is that they're not static, that they change over time. And so like I remember at the start of the campaign, a giant kind of like spider creature
Oh
was
my.
attacking the
Uh-huh.
party, and like and not even a giant spider, like some sort of you know uh, demonic librarian spider creature in this old decrepit library. And there was an NPC along with us,
Mhm.
and I just remember like the creature was coming in to like stab at Aiden Broadmoor, my character, with one of its sharp kind of forelegs, and my character like grabbed an NPC and like
Oh
blocked the
my.
attack with the NPC to like save his own
Right.
skin.
Oh,
And so
that makes sense.
decidedly unheroic, but then like also something to reflect on, something to be ashamed of as the story went on. And I observed like the much more heroic kind of characteristics of this other group of people, and then started to like change my mind over time, and then like see them do things for me that I wouldn't do for anyone, like rescue
Mhm.
me, save my life. And then just starting to over time become um, less and less selfish, more and more open and kind, and like really bond with his newfound family of this, the other people in the adventuring party.
That's fantastic. That is because again, you could play it either way. You could play that the character does grow and changes and learns, or you could just play that this is the way the character is, and the party kind of has to like what does the party do with that? So interesting. Yeah, I'm playing.
Sure.
I'm looking forward to. I started playing um, a tiefling warlock in one of the campaigns, and similar thing. So my patron is an undead Egyptian god, and unbeknownst to me, the patron is trying to get me to raise an undead army to take over the world and destroy the world for them. But I'm a little naive and unaware of what the patrons actually, what their goal actually is. I was more interested in getting the power from the patron, not so much interested in the details of the contract. So So I'm going to I still haven't decided which way it's going to play out. Is he going to turn and say no, this is not something that I'm okay with? Like I'm not going to help you raise an undead army, or is he going to say, well, I want to keep my power? This is kind of what I have to do to keep my power. So I'm curious to see how the campaign plays out and what choices my character makes. But I've kind of put him in this precarious kind of big life decision of choosing good or evil, and he's kind of chaotic neutral at the moment. So it could go either way. So I've never played that before, where the outcome is undetermined.
Awesome. Well, as someone who likes to think of himself as chaotic good in real life, I hope you choose the light, my friend. Um, and the cool thing I like about your story and that setup is that there's a real cost behind doing something good. You have to give up, potentially the source of your power, the source of your kind of uniqueness and
Right.
your usefulness to the party, and your ability to potentially do other kind of good with that power in order to really kind of break with your patron there. So I always think that, you know, a value is only a value if you do it when it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you make that kind of decision with your character, that's a really kind of strong indication of the character of your character, like
The character of the
what
character.
they're,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. I love that. I'm rooting for your character. Challenge the patron. Take him down.
Yeah, I want to see. I've been working with the DM on trying to figure out how that all fits into the campaign, but we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I want to see. I mean, I think ultimately he's going to choose right over wrong, and sacrifice his power. But does that mean loss of life? Does that mean, what does that mean? So I'm I'm very curious to see how it all plays out. He's got something. The DM's got something in mind. So that brings me to my next question. So how much collaboration should there be with the dungeon master when developing a character's backstory? Like how much, what, like, because I mean, you kind of want to create a character that's that's going to kind of fit the campaign, but still be something of your own. So to what extent should a DM be involved in helping you craft your character, or help guide you kind of to finding something that's going to be a good fit for the party, for the campaign, etc.
Well, as a game master, or the dungeon master myself, I think that the DM should proactively solicit input from the players at the table and involve them in building the world, because it's easy for a dungeon master to get lost in the world that they're creating and for them to
Hmm.
think of it as their world and
Right.
their story. And that leads to, I think, the single biggest killer of fun in a role playing game, which is this feeling like you're on rails. Like
Yes.
you don't have real choice or agency. It's like, okay, the DM has got an idea of where this is going, and I actually don't have any choice. It's like the train is heading that way.
Right.
Get on it or don't. And then, think about how the player feels about their cool backstory that they spent all
Hmm.
this time creating. Like,
Sure.
why does your backstory matter if you don't have any choice or agency in the present? You know, um, so I think there are ways to avoid that, and this is I would say I borrowed this idea from someone that is a better dungeon master than me,
Uh-huh.
and there are plenty of those out there. And I think people should generally just steal good ideas whenever they see them. Like no one like hoards good ideas in our
Right.
community and in this space and hobby. Um, and the idea is to ask of the players at the table to create parts of the world. Give them a little homework.
Mm-hmm.
Create an NPC. That exists in this world. Where does that NPC live? How did you know that NPC? Um, give them an item, or have them create an item that comes from the world but has no utility. So, I remember a character of mine um, in a game that I was playing from this DM that I learned this kind of
Mm-hmm.
tip from, had a miniature boat in a bottle, like a little kind of like handcrafted miniature boat in a bottle. So no use, no value. It's not going to help in combat. It's not going to help in social
Uh-huh.
interaction.
Right.
There's literally like zero like mechanical use for this thing, except to force me to consider like, where did I get this? And in this particular game, I'm playing in the Dragonlance setting, which
Mm-hmm.
some people may remember from uh, Tracy Hicks and Margaret Weiss's books. I think I'm getting their names correct, but a lot of people
Right.
read those books back in the day. The Dragons of blank season, and so it like acted as a start, like a thought starter. It's like, well, okay, I got this tiny little boat crafted by tiny little Kender hands, which is like that setting's version of a halfling.
Right. Right. Interesting.
Okay, well, then I was in Kendermore. Okay, well, if I was in Kendermore, might I have met this other player's character at the table who's a Kender? And so it acted as a seed from which more story and backstory could grow. So I think, DMs should give their players that opportunity to like create something from the world. Don't just hand them the world, like
Right.
involve them actively in creating it. And then from there, like encourage them to like think about those sorts of things. I also think that like a pro tip for DMs
Yeah.
is to have like players' characters know some of the other players' characters. Because why would a group of people risk their lives to pursue some call to adventure and like stay with each other versus any other loyalty that they might have to their family or their kingdom or whatever else, to their own sense of safety and security? And one way to do that is like, if you have a group of 4 players at a table,
Mm-hmm.
have like one character know the second character and the third character, but not the fourth character.
Okay.
And then you can have like the second character know the first character and the fourth character, but not the third character. So everyone knows someone else and everyone doesn't know someone else. And so there's some people that you're meeting for the first time, other people where you have some background and history with. And then it not only like avoids the pitfall for a player and their character's backstory to just be all about them and only be interesting to them and not
Right.
to the rest of the table. It also opens up the opportunity to like introduce people. Like character 2, I know you, and I know character 3, but I don't know character 4. Character 2, can you introduce me to character 4? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how did you? It just opens up opportunities
Sure.
to like
Sure.
start dialogue. So I put a high degree of responsibility on the DM for that, and to do things that will involve players and their backstory and its creation. Um, but there's more players out there than there are DMs, and it certainly doesn't hurt to ask and to be proactive.
Right.
Or maybe you have a newer DM or a DM that hasn't tried that particular trick. I mean, um, and why not ask? Like, hey, can I create an NPC in the world? I don't think any DM would say like, no, get out of here. This is my world. Only I create the
Definitely not.
histories. You know,
Right.
it, players that offer to do some of the work, to lift some of the load from a DM,
Right.
I think the response that you're going to get 100% of the time is like, yes, absolutely. Like, come on, let's do this together.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I think this topic has come up with others that I've interviewed on the podcast about railroading the players in one way, or giving them a sandbox to play in, and I think having that level of autonomy and just being able to kind of choose where you get to go really I think enhances the game. Even as if we're going back to talking about backstory, why is there what's the purpose of a backstory if you're just going to railroad them down a particular path? There's no there's very little point to it at that point, I think. Um so by giving them the freedom to choose where to go, so based on their history, where do you feel your character would go? So that's a really good point to make.
Thank you. I
So
would maybe add one thing to that, which is that you can go too far in the other direction. You can
fair
um,
point.
have a world that's so open that the players just don't know what to do, don't feel like they have a purpose. And so it is a tricky balance to, allow freedom. And maybe there is a path. Maybe there
Hmm.
is a railroad, and there is a kind of a central antagonist at the end of the campaign, or, that needs to be stopped, whatever it is. But then you at least have to allow for detours, you know.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think it's good to have a thread that the story follows. I always liken it to a choose your own adventure book. There's a story, there's a plot, but there's still room for you to make it your own,
Yeah. Yeah.
for sure.
Completely agree.
So I don't know about you, but I've seen this with some people. I struggled with it the first time. Um, Again, people new to D&D. Sometimes it's not there. There's so much to remember. So there's all the rules. Remembering the dice. Which dice do I roll for this? Which dice do I roll for that? How much do I use for my weapon? Oh wait, there's advantage, and there's disadvantage. Inspiration, yada yada yada. But it can sometimes on the face of it be a little intimidating and overwhelming. So as far as creating the backstory is concerned, what's some advice you'd give to someone to maybe jump over that hurdle? Is there, when they're creating their first character, where do they what's a good starting off point maybe to again, so we talked about either starting back from kind of a trigger point in their history, or how are they right now, but how do you what might you say to someone who's trying to kind of come up with that backstory for the first time for a new character?
I would say, especially for D&D, which
Hmm.
is fairly combat heavy, like there's not a lot of D&D games out there where combat is a minimal or absent part of the game.
Right.
And with that in mind, I think a good place to start is to ask yourself a couple questions. The first one being, why would I risk my life? What would I risk my life for? And communicate that to the DM. Like, this is something, that motivates my character, and that is important enough to my character that they would risk it all. Risk, losing their own life to, advance whatever that
Hmm.
that thing is. And there's a whole host of motivations for that. Good ones, bad ones,
Right.
somewhere in between. And so answering that question can be like a good kind of like first step. Um, a second one, and at least as important, is asking yourself the question, what would lead me to be loyal to other people? What would lead me to be loyal to, the other people around the
Mm-hmm.
table? Like, what sort of person and personality would my character need to have to like go to the mat for the other characters at
Right.
the table? And if you answer those two questions and communicate that to the DM, you should have a character that will heed the call to adventure that they will inevitably get, and that will feel natural and true when you make decisions to support the other player characters at the table. And it's not just about you and your own thing, but it's, it's being a part of a found family.
Right.
Which is really, I think, what these tabletop role playing games are all about. Like, why are you spending all your time with these other weirdos around the
Mm-hmm.
table?
Oh, for sure.
It's because you care about them, and you care about them enough that you choose them over whatever background or circumstances that you came from. So yeah, I think, to me, keep it simple. Just ask those two questions: what would cause me to risk my life for something, for a cause? Who would I need to be
Mm-hmm.
to risk my life for something? And who would I need to be to have like unwavering loyalty to other people? Like, what would need to be true about me and about them for that? And then just talk. I mean, that's what a session zero is all about.
Right.
Is crafting your character and your backstory as a collaborative effort, not as a individual author kind of coming up with a cool individual story.
So let's talk a little bit about, because we haven't really yet touched on this topic yet. We've mentioned it several times, but let's talk about session zero and what that means for what happens at the, like, let's talk about your tables, for example, that you DM. So how do you welcome in new players into a session zero to talk about backstory and their character development, and how do you kind of help blend that party together so that when they're ready for the first session together, they're a cohesive unit? So how do you tie in all those backstories into an adventuring party for a campaign?
Yeah, I feel like I've done this with varying degrees of success in
Mm-hmm.
past games that I've run. And even in some recent ones, I have not given, just to be honest, haven't given, session zero its proper time and
Mm-hmm.
attention. And then, like, really quickly realized what a big mistake that was, you know. Um, but I'm just going to talk about the times when I did stuff good and
Perfect.
well, rather than my
Absolutely.
mistakes. So I remember kind of a group that I started with, where I was the DM, and we've been playing since the start of the pandemic. This was an
Mm-hmm.
online game, and it's still going. What I think close to 3 years on, something like that. Um, it started out with a pretty involved session zero. It was a lot of us getting together. We met online. We didn't know each other beforehand, and we were all kind of just stuck at home, sheltering in place. And part of it was just getting to know these people, like
Mm-hmm.
asking them like why they're interested in playing D&D to begin with. So there was a
Right.
gal who had never played before, but had was a critter, and would watch and listen to a lot of Critical Role, and
Mm-hmm.
was just really drawn to it. Due to that. There was another person that had played for decades
Right.
and knew everything about the game and was a
Oh,
DM,
wow.
and his motivation for playing was different. He was like, I just want to play Lost Mines of Phandelver. I want something simple. I feel like every campaign I play is made for people that have done it all and seen it all. Like, I just
Right.
want like a very straightforward experience. It's like, okay, that's interesting. And there was a couple a husband and wife, and she had kind of like grown up playing D&D second edition with her family.
Mm-hmm.
And she brought her husband into the hobby, which I thought was super cool because I hear the reverse of that all the time.
Right.
Like,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
So that was, it made me realize I had this pre-existing, notion that I hadn't really even thought about. But I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. And they wanted characters that like knew each other and like came from a similar place and background. So that was important to them. And so I started out with like, why do you want to play D&D? Like, you the person. And then from there went into those two questions that I asked, like, what would cause you to risk your life for something, and what would cause you to be loyal to a group of other people, basically a group of strangers, or you can know them in your past and that sort of thing. So I teed it up like that for them, and got a sense of the character arcs that I believe would have been fulfilling for the players. And overwhelmingly, it was about self-discovery. Was like the motivating factor for people, like wanting to, so what the one of the gals that was currently doing a lot of improv, she wanted, like, she was drawing actually inspiration from Ariel, the Little Mermaid, as someone that just wanted to like get out from a sheltered kind of experience and like see what else is out there in the world, and having that be like such a huge draw that you would actually risk your life to do that, to like experience a whole new world. Wrong Disney movie. But and I thought that was interesting because I would have never made a character like that with a motivation like that. But then I was thinking about it and like, oh yeah, Ariel, the Little Mermaid, she like goes to a pretty sketchy sea witch just to like, see a part of the world that was previously inaccessible to her. So there's that was, I think, laid out, and as a result, we're all we're still playing this campaign. We've got this group of people that are 3 years on, still adventuring, and actually like not even that far along after 3 years. I think like the party's level 8 after all this time. Which is,
after 3 years, that's got to be quite an adventure to.
Who would have thought?
Like level 8 is what, just your second ability score increase. So interesting.
Yeah. And to think that we started off on the intro campaign, Lost Mines of Delver, the original one, not the new one, coming out. And
that's how I started. I started on Lost Mines, and I still love it.
It's supposed to be a 5-session adventure, which is like,
is it really?
People get through that, and no one gets through it in 5 sessions. But like in the book, it actually says like, oh yeah, you should be able to accomplish each of the 5 chapters 1 session each. Like with Hugh, like playing with anyway. We played it particularly slowly, and they went off the beaten path and completely off the rails, and were doing their own thing, and really identifying or finding themselves in who they were through that play. And it was, as a DM, that's I've DM'd a number of games, and my usual group with the people that I play with in person, they're such power gamers, every single one of them. To be honest, as am I have to like fight the urge, like feel like I've got lycanthropy, and it's like must have 8 intelligence and 20 strength, and I have to like tone it back and not make such cookie cutter characters, but this group of people, most of them were so new to
Mhm.
D. Well, half of them were so new to D&D that you had characters like a fighter that somehow managed to have like 13 AC as like a level 4 or 5 character. Like, how do you create a fighter that's so easy to hit?
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
but yeah, this guy did it, and what it was this super fun character, and like just looking at the stats and things of all of them, it's like horribly unoptimized, and yet this group, it's been the most like enjoyable and fulfilling D&D game I've ever played, because the stats, that's not where their attention was.
Right.
Their attention were what was in like their backstories and their story arcs and how it would change over time and the role playing moment. So I knew this group was special when they were just traveling along the road and, from point A to point B. And, I just put up a screen of like a campfire,
Hmm.
like a crackling sound of a kind of a campfire going as they made camp for the night. And they were all just sitting around the campfire, just talking to each other in character. And I was doing nothing. I was just sitting there, like listening to them, like recount the day and like what they were hoping to do when they reached Neverwinter, and talking about this funny merchant that they had like ran into the day earlier on the road. And it's like, and they're just like building off each other, and like the more comfortable one player got with role playing, the more comfortable everyone got, and it's
Right.
just like this virtuous cycle. It was really cool, and as a DM, just a very rewarding experience.
That's fantastic. I think you had said something. I'm trying to remember. I was just listening to what you're saying, so I lost my train of thought. I think it's really interesting how the how the backstories really. I think it drives a lot of the role play, like you said, really really well, because that's. I mean, we talk about we've talked about a bunch of the races, classes, etc. And all that's kind of pre built. Like you can play opposite a class or a race or things like that, but a lot of that's already kind of set in stone, so to speak. But really, the backstory is where you get to put the meat on the bones that D&D has created. And I think, um, it's I liked what you were saying about the players not optimizing the stats, because you can really create some interesting, very interesting interactions for your character by not necessarily optimizing them. You can imagine a fighter with 13 AC. He goes into the fight. He's getting hit every time, but he may be, it may be just because he's slow, but he's still going to go in there and fight and stand beside his party. So there's some really interesting ways you can definitely play that. So I love that.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you. It
it's yeah, like I never think about that, because it's after you've played a while. I think you're just, like you said. I think you fall into that trap of trying to optimize your character and really make them strong and everything like that. But you forget about kind of the early days, and how you really didn't understand a lot of those concepts, and you almost had more fun with it then than you do now.
yeah, yeah, it's you can overcomplicate things
For
for
sure.
sure. And it can actually take away from the experience.
Right.
Um, but it's obviously, there's no one right way to play D&D. But one thing that I think is generally true is when players spend time and care on their backstory, it shows,
Hmm.
and DMs appreciate it, and it makes the DM want to do the same. It makes them want to reciprocate. And so oh, okay, you created a character with this awesome backstory, and all right, yeah, you're a fighter with 13 armor class, but like, let me play into this and some of the stuff that you've written, and
Mm-hmm.
let me design a game session that's just all for your character, and we'll like create something in game that will actually make you like stay conscious during the combat encounters. Yeah,
Right.
um,
Right.
because the DM wants everyone to have fun, and it's no fun to like just be a punching bag, in a combat encounter. And so what that means is that the DM is going to balance the strengths of the characters
Mm-hmm.
out. I think people forget that a DM can, you know, create an item that you find that increases your armor class.
Sure.
They can, create an experience that happens to your character that changes their abilities. So you
Right.
can make an unoptimized character, and that character could become the most powerful character at the table just through story and customization that the DM does. So it can feel, I think, as a player, a little risky to do that. Like it feels like a little bit of a leap of faith.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do I know if I create this like horribly unoptimized character that is unoptimized for a reason because of this interesting backstory? How do I know that the DM is going to like compensate for that to make sure I'm having fun? Because it's then fundamentally out of your control. But that's part of the game. That's part of the experience. It's not a one
Right.
player game. You know.
For sure. For sure. So I know we're running out of time here. So let me ask you this question to kind of wrap up here. So are there any resources or tools that you would recommend um, for both DMs and players who are looking to trying to maybe they've already created some backstories for characters, maybe they're looking to enhance their abilities. What are there any tools or resources out there that you use or have used that might be of value to others trying to write up a backstory for their character?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is probably going to be a polarizing answer, depending on kind of what your stance is on like Chat GPT,
Mm-hmm.
specifically generative AI
Right.
generally. But if you are comfortable using a tool like that, if you believe that, like anything, there are bad people that use tools to do bad stuff, and there are good people that use that same tool to like do good stuff or harmless stuff, then you could consider using a service like ChatGPT as a thought partner,
Mm-hmm.
a brainstorming buddy. Just yeah, here's what I'm thinking for my character. Give me 10 ideas that you know would help me flesh this out,
Right.
or that sort of thing. I think it's what you don't want to do is just have something or someone else create something entirely for you.
Right.
But I do think that tools like ChatGPT or any other large language model can help get you unstuck. Um, and then if you don't want to use the tool, the other thing is to like riff with a friend, somebody
Mm-hmm.
else at the table, like do
Right.
the same thing, but brainstorm with a human instead of an AI chatbot. So I would recommend you know using that if you're comfortable doing so. Like if you don't have probably there are a lot of people that have very well thought out reasons for being kind of philosophically opposed to this stuff. And that's awesome. I have a
Mm-hmm.
ton of respect for people that have different points of views than I have, and especially people who take a principled stance on their
Sure.
point of view. Um, but if that's not you, and you've thought it through, and you do believe that these tools are like worth using, or there's not a kind of a issue in how you would intend to use them.
Right.
And I think they're a great resource, absolutely a great resource. There are a bunch of services out there that offer like tables that you can use, roll a dice, get an idea.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Those are created by humans. Probably too many to list. Don John, I think, is a common resource
Mm-hmm.
that people use. I met this guy. We met on Threads. There's somebody else I met on Threads. I think his handle is Dungeon Glitch, and he's got a site that's got some tables, I want to say.
All right, cool.
But to be honest, like, I use ChatGPT, but I know there's a lot of great tools out there that offer that same sort of thing, but without the AI.
I mean, I would even say, for book lovers, comic book readers, take a look at there. A lot of these backstories are very common archetypes of. You look at Batman, you look at Lion King, the parents who die in the background and they run off and kind of find themselves and come back to be the hero and save the day. These are a lot of the very common stories that you can take those same backgrounds and use that same kind of concept for your own character. Like one of my characters was a tabaxi monk who I based off of kind of the backstory of Daredevil. He was a blind monk, so he had the martial arts abilities. He couldn't see, so he had that same kind of story as Daredevil did, but it became my own character. After that was just a jumping off point to get started. So there's all sorts of great backgrounds in literature and things that you can use in history. I'm another user of ChatGPT just for generating ideas at volume. It can be really helpful to see something that might spark your interest and you use that as a jumping off point. So there's a lot of tools. Yeah, the tables that you mentioned, you roll and you can come up with all sorts of random ideas for your character. So there are lots of tools and lots of ways to be inspired for those backstories. So I think that's a great thing to remember. There's nothing that's going to limit you. You don't have to be, it doesn't have to be 100% original. That's it's hard to be 100% original these days. So think about what you love, especially if this is your first character. Think about a story that you love and maybe pick up from someone's backstory there and make it your own. So there are tons of options out there for getting inspiration for writing your character's backstory.
Yeah.
So Courtland, thank
Absolutely.
you so much for being on the podcast today. Do you have any parting words or anything else you would like to share with our audience before we wrap up?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I want to thank you for having me on your show and just let you know this was a blast for me. Like, what a fun way to spend an hour just talking about this hobby that, both you and I enjoy. Parting thoughts, not, not really. If I'm on the internet at Tavern, mainly active on Threads, and I love meeting new people and talking to folks. And all of us out here in the TTRPG creator space, we're real humans. Like, we're not like companies, and we talk to people and like talking to people. And I know a lot of us are introverts, but I know personally that
what you're talking about.
I mean, I'm a pretty shy person myself, but what I've found since kind of getting a little bit deeper into the scene here is that people are awesome and cool and nice and generally like connecting. It's not an imposition, to just like reach out and say hi and ask a question and strike up a conversation. So I don't know. I guess I feel like I'm giving advice to myself, not to anyone else. But
that's all right.
it's been really cool meeting a lot of new people in the TTRPG space, and it's just, what a beautiful, diverse, vibrant, interesting, smart, kind group of people. And so that's probably the biggest benefit of getting into like a TTRPG like Dungeons and Dragons, is you get to meet awesome people.
Yep. Completely agree.
I'll leave it at that.
Excellent. Great note to end on. Courtland, thank you again so much. I appreciate you being here today and for sharing your expertise. And talltavern.com, correct?
Talltavern.com. Yeah, you got it. And it was a blast. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Legends, Loot, and Lore. We hope you've enjoyed immersing yourself in the realms of legends, uncovering hidden loot, and delving into captivating lore. But the journey doesn't end here. For exclusive content, behind-the-scenes insights, and access to our community, visit legendslootandlore.supercast.com. There you'll be able to support the podcast, where you can join our Discord server for lively discussions and subscriber-only content, and connect with fellow enthusiasts. Stay connected with us on Instagram and Facebook at Legends, Loot, and Lore to continue on the quest. By following our social media channels, you'll be the first to know about upcoming episodes, bonus content, and exciting announcements. If you've enjoyed your time with us, we kindly ask you to rate and subscribe to this podcast. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue producing captivating episodes and embarking on new quests. Thank you for being a part of our journey. We're thrilled to have you by our side as we unravel the legends, uncover the loot, and delve deeper into the lore. Until next time.